The envelope. Two words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. He's yours. Daniel stood frozen by the kitchen counter, the grocery bags still hanging from his fingers. Across from him, Maya held the ultrasound photo against her chest like a shield, her eyes searching his face for something, anger, maybe, or forgiveness, or just a reaction of any kind. Outside their apartment in Denver, Colorado, the evening traffic hummed along, oblivious. Inside, the quiet was so heavy it felt like a third person in the room. They hadn't shared a real conversation in months. Separate schedules. Separate sides of the bed. Conversations that never went deeper than who was picking up milk. So when Maya said she was pregnant and that the child was his, none of it lined up with the life they'd been quietly falling out of. If you believe people can find their way back to each other, stick around, this one's worth it. Daniel had pictured fatherhood before, in the easy, unguarded way people picture things they assume will happen someday. Saturday mornings teaching a kid to ride a bike. Terrible knock-knock jokes at the dinner table. He just hadn't pictured it arriving like this, cracked open, uncertain, tangled in a marriage that had gone cold. For years earlier, Daniel and Maya had been the couple other people pointed to. They cooked together on Sundays, hosted friends, made each other laugh until it hurt. Daniel restored old furniture for a living. Maya taught third grade. It wasn't flawless, but it was theirs, and it worked. Then Maya's father got sick, and everything shifted. She drove 2 hours to Pueblo most weekends to help her mother manage his care, running herself thin between the hospital, the classroom, and home. Daniel offered what he could, but nothing seemed to land right. After the funeral, Maya folded inward. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just a slow, quiet drifting, the kind that's almost harder to name because nothing ever officially broke. Now here she was, pregnant, and Daniel didn't know what to feel first. He wanted to ask the obvious questions. But something about the way Maya was looking at him, not guilty, not defensive, just worn down by grief she'd been carrying alone, made him hold his tongue. The next few weeks were rough. Friends had opinions. His sister Renee told him to protect his heart and walk away if he needed to. Others said the opposite. None of it made the decision for him. One night, sitting by himself in a diner near his shop, he watched an older couple a few booths over. The man helped his wife into her coat, adjusted her collar, said something that made her laugh. Nothing dramatic. Just decades of small, ordinary care, still showing up. Daniel realized he'd spent so long trying to be right that he'd forgotten what it meant to just be present. He went home. Maya was on the fire escape, wrapped in a sweater though it wasn't cold enough to need one. They talked until the sky went from orange to black. No accusations, no interruptions, just two people finally telling each other the truth. Maya talked about the grief she'd buried, the loneliness that had crept in without her noticing, the guilt of feeling alone even when Daniel was right there trying. Daniel talked about his own helplessness, his fear of losing her, the resentment he hadn't known how to name. Somewhere in that conversation, something that had been locked for months finally loosened. Weeks later, Maya brought up a paternity test once the baby arrived. Daniel agreed, not to prove a point, but because they both needed the clarity to move forward without a shadow hanging over them. As her due date got closer, Daniel found himself at every appointment, putting together a crib at midnight, arguing cheerfully with Maya over paint swatches for the nursery. Something between them was mending, slowly, the way things actually mend, unevenly but for real. Late in October, Maya went into labor. After a long night, a baby boy arrived. Daniel held him in the hospital room, that impossibly small hand curling around his finger, and understood that whatever the test said, this moment already belonged to him. The results came a few days later. Daniel opened the envelope with hands that wouldn't quite stay still. He was the father. The room went soft with relief. Maya cried. Daniel cried. Even the nurse checking vitals in the hallway paused to smile. But looking back, Daniel would say it was never really about the envelope. It was about everything that happened before they opened it. The hard conversations, the choice to stay curious instead of certain, the decision to rebuild instead of retreat. Years later, their son, Elliot, grew into a kid with Daniel's stubbornness and Maya's easy laugh. Their apartment filled back up with noise, board games, burnt pancakes, arguments over bedtime. One evening, Daniel sat on the fire escape watching Elliot chase the last of the streetlights turning on below. Maya sat beside him, leaning into his shoulder. Neither of them said much. They didn't need to. If this one stuck with you, let us know where you're watching from. We always read the comments. Some marriages don't survive because they never crack. They survive because two people are willing to sit in the crack together and rebuild from there. Because it's rarely the perfect moments that save a relationship. It's the imperfect people who decide, even when it would be easier not to choose each other again.